This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
Welcome to the Biz Doctor podcast, my love letter to business owners the world over. I'm your host, Lauren Goldstein, award-winning business consultant and advisor who's fondly nicknamed the Business Doctor by my clients. My clients call me the Business Doctor because I help business owners who are burning the candle at both ends diagnose what is actually keeping them stuck in and buried under the day-to-day of their business, and then formulate a business treatment plan to help them adjust their business and team to fit them. And most importantly, support them in having what I call true entrepreneurial freedom. If you're ready to look at your business in a different lens and elevate yourself out of the business operator in the trenches 24/7 to visionary business owner and leader who can take a breath, vacation, and have more fun making an impact with your business, then grab your favorite beverage and your earbuds, and let's dive into our latest episode. We've all probably heard the infamous quote from Tim Sanders, "Your network is your net worth." I heard that many years ago and it's always stuck with me, but to be honest, the idea of building my network deep, not just wide, aka having more real relationships and connections with the people in my network, felt a little daunting and scary, especially as a self-diagnosed introvert. And yes, introverts can have a podcast too. I see the people who have this skill and do this successfully and wonder to myself, what secret power do they have that I don't that makes them so good at this? Well, if you're anything like me, looking to make better connections with the people in your personal and professional life, then you're going to love the episode we have in store for you today. We're going to dive into how we can all converse and connect with greater authenticity, ease, and confidence. Welcome back to the Biz Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Goldstein, and joining me in studio today is esteemed author, speaker, and conversation and connection expert, Patti DeNucci. If you want to improve your ability to converse and connect with the humans in your life, this is going to be a goldmine of an episode for you. Now, before we get to the real juice of this episode, let me properly introduce my guest here in studio. Patti DeNucci believes it's not just how many people you know or talk to, it's the quality of your conversations and connections. She's the author of the award-winning success guide, The Intentional Networker, Attracting Powerful Relationships, Referrals, and Results in Business, and has just released her new book, More Than Just Talk, The Essential Guide for Anyone Who Wants to Have Better Conversations. Patti is also a speaker, workshop facilitator, and consultant. Organizations such as Microsoft, Rodan & Fields, HEB, MGM Resorts, Hewlett-Packard, and the Texas Conference for Women, and many others have invited Patti to help their teams and event participants learn how to attract, experience, and enjoy more meaningful conversations and more rewarding connections. Bottom line, Patti is going to help us peel back the many layers of conversing and connecting well, which honestly is probably the most important and the least trained life work skill. So get comfy and turn up the volume. Welcome to the show, Patti.
Thanks, Lauren.
You're
what a great
so
time.
welcome.
Oh my goodness. Usually you and I are, chatting over a beverage or a meal or something. So this is a fun, different way to do it.
I know. I love that. And I also love our pizza and wine connections too. And honestly, I'm beyond excited to have you on the show because I know this is a life skill that I'm still building and so many others struggle with. And honestly, the way you present on this topic makes it so simple yet impactful. And in fact, that's how we met and became friends. You were talking at a conference I was attending, back in what was it, like 2011?
Wow. 2014? I don't know. It was a while back. It was a while back,
which is crazy to think. And I personally love your story and how you got into this impactful work. So why don't you take a minute and share a bit more about your path, how it led you to being here, the 2-time best-selling author, speaker, and consultant for professionals, and a passionate advocate for better conversation.
I can do the long version or the short version. I'll do kind of the medium version with the highlights.
Yes.
I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota, an iron mining town. And
my
dad and grandfather were the local Chevrolet dealers. And they built their business. In fact, my grandfather started the business during the Great Depression
Wow.
Automobiles were new. No one had any money. And I don't know what got into him, but he just loved cars and wanted to talk about them and sell them. So he built the business literally one conversation at a time. And he was so good to all the people in our town. We had people from all over the world in our town, people from Italy and Cornwall, England, and Norway and Serbia. And he didn't really care what language you spoke, but if you could, get a little English going, he loved to talk about cars. And my dad took over the business, followed in his footsteps, made my sisters and I all work in the business, partially, I think, to teach us about business, but also to teach us about dealing with people. Answering the phones, dealing with customers that were coming in and needing a spark plug or something, ordering a part or needing some service done on their vehicles. And of course, we used that money not just to buy clothes and the things we wanted, but we paid for our college education that way too. So it was a really great setup. And, we got to see our dad and our grandfather in action and we didn't call it networking back then, but they were brilliant at it. They were just good conversationalists and connectors and community people. So had that great background. Went to school in Wisconsin, came to Texas following a boy, started working in marketing communications, opened my own practice in 1989. And, gradually, I don't know how this really happened. It was a very gradual progression, but I was doing really great with my business, and I knew networking was critical to that. And people started asking me to go to coffee to ask me how I did my networking, and, hey, would you come speak at our group? And will you share your success tips? And there was a point where I think the economy tanked. Every time the economy tanks, I do something new. The economy tanked. I think it was 2008. And I had an empty nest that was about to happen. My son was in high school. I needed a good project. So I started writing a book. And that book became The Intentional Networker, which launched my speaking career, my professional speaking, workshop facilitating career, taking concepts from the book, things that didn't make it into the book sometimes, and creating one book. And of course, you can't stop there. You have to write another one. People kept asking me more questions, like, tell me about the conversation piece. Like, what do I say? What do I do? And that prompted my new book, More Than Just Talk. So, I guess one thing I want to say to your listeners is, your life, especially if you're young, your life is going to take some interesting twists and turns, and follow that path, because if you follow your strengths and the areas where you appear to have an edge, if you can do that, you're going to have an interesting career, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be meaningful too.
Oh, I love that. And I love how fascinating your story is, and how everything kind of sets you up for this,
it's amazing,
moment in
isn't
time.
it? It really is amazing that, you just keep following the path, and, oh, well, this is a good idea. And, I'm not saying just, oh, I should change gears every 2 years or be all over the place, but life and careers take us in interesting places for sure.
They do. They do. So I think the first place that I want to start for us is understanding what the definition of a good conversation is, because I think all of us might have a slightly different idea of what a good conversation is.
It's interesting. I just did a presentation at a networking group, a women's business networking group, and I asked that very question. And I think a lot of the people who answered, and we had a little discussion going, after people sat at their tables and talked with their table mates, and then we kind of opened it up to the larger group. And I think a lot of the people said the word connection. They want some sort of sense of connection. And I think a lot of them said that answer because that was kind of an obvious answer. But some want inspiration, some want support, some want meaningful dialogue that is not stuck in the small talk range. And small talk, there's nothing wrong with small talk. Small talk is necessary. It's sort of a warm up. It's where we, feel each other out and see, do I like this person? Do I like their presence? Do I like, their vibe? But we don't have to stay there. And that's one of the issues is that I think my book addresses is, how do we leverage small talk, and then how do we move out of it and take it in the direction that we want to take a conversation? So different people, I very much allow the reader of my book and the people who are participants in my presentation, I very much allow them to define, well, what do you want out of your conversation? Some people like lively, some people like loud, some people like quiet, some people like fun, some people like, oh, let's talk about something deep and meaningful. And we could have different desires with our conversation at different times of day, different situations, different settings. So I think connection is the big piece we all want to have. And there are also some other best practices, things like respect, things like authenticity, things like kindness, graciousness. There's so many best practices that we can all get better at.
That's great to leave it in the person who's having the conversation's hands and not create too much structure around it. Because I do think there's a level of analysis paralysis of like, if I follow these 5 steps, then I'm going to be a good communicator. And I think there's a certain maybe 5 steps, but also letting it flow.
This is the work of a lifetime. I mean, I've been studying this for 35 plus years, and I'm still learning and trying to apply some of the things I learned. And I think we all have so much room to improve oh my gosh, we have so much room to improve. Beginning with the basics of, greeting and acknowledging people in a respectful way, smiling, making eye contact, looking up from our laptop or our phone when people are in our office or, walked into the room. There's just so much to it.
Yeah. And let's go there for a minute, because there's 2 things that I want your thoughts on. The first is I'm just going to call it a plague of trying to be interesting instead of interested. And then I've also seen so I'm what's considered a geriatric millennial. So we grew up in the analog age. Like, we didn't have social media growing up. I still remember dial-up internet when we didn't have Call ID, all the things. And so, like, for us, connection is different than, I think, what social media has created, that has created this disconnection.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on interested versus interesting, and how in this digital age of disconnection, like, how that's impacting relationships.
Yeah, the interested versus interesting, I think that's been going on for a long time. And I actually say in my book, I think it's actually okay to be interested and interesting. And here's why. I think when we have natural curiosity about life, about people, and we go out and do things, we read books, we travel, we get out of our little worlds, I think we become more interesting people. And we're more interesting because our ability to talk about more things allows us to be more interested in what other people are doing. For example, being able to talk to somebody about what are the things that we have in common. What things do we have in common? Do we both like travel? Do we like wine? Do we like books? Do we like hiking? What common ground can we find? And the more things you're interested in make you more interesting, if that makes sense. So the interested and interesting, but obviously our job as a good conversationalist, and if we want to connect with others, is not to walk into a room and become the most fascinating person in the room via what we say. We can actually become the most interesting person and memorable person in the room by listening to what others have to say. I mean, haven't you had that happen where you're in this, social setting or networking event, and you are able to share with someone and they listen very thoughtfully and thoroughly, and they interject just enough, or maybe they ask follow-up questions. Don't you find them to be the most charming person in the room?
Yeah.
I mean, it so rarely happens, for starters. So that's a big piece. So the interested and interesting is definitely an interesting dynamic. So the point of walking into the room and trying to be interesting, or try to be anything other than who you really are, is going to be a disconnect, and it's going to be in some cases a turnoff. So there's that. I also want to comment on what you said. You're talking about being a geriatric millennial. I am at the very end of the baby boomer. I was born in 59, so now everybody knows how old I am. And we grew up, we had what we call feral childhoods, where mom kicked us out of the house, literally, after breakfast on a Saturday, and we weren't supposed to come back in until lunchtime. When we saw dad's car drive down the driveway, that was our cue to come home and eat lunch, and they kicked us out again. I mean, if we weren't in the house, if the weather was anything warmer than 20 below zero, because again, I grew up in Minnesota, you're outside and you're on your own, baby. So we, as young kids, started developing our social intelligence early. We made our own friends. We planned our own games and our activities. We made things up. We put on shows. We had such a good time, and our parents were not involved, and it wasn't like we were getting in trouble. But I think our social intelligence started to develop in different ways, and very much analog, very much no tech whatsoever. And we learned about how, if you wanted to be a good friend, if you wanted to be accepted into the crowd, you were friendly, and you didn't throw fits and start crying over every little issue, and you didn't run home and tell your mom that someone wasn't nice to you. We just had our social skills started up young. Whereas now, I think the generation that grew up with screens has a definite, they're a little behind. There may be a lot behind. And, no offense to any of you young people. I envy you, and I really want your wrinkle-free skin. But, but
Me too.
Up differently. Yeah. And they do some things really, really well.
Yeah.
There's a lot
I remember
to be said
those
there.
days too. Yeah.
But all of this can be learned. Anybody who says, oh, but I'm shy, oh, but I'm an introvert, all of those, first of all, an introvert isn't about not being able to socialize. It's that your battery is going to get drained. And do you find this to be true, Lauren? After you're around people, you need your me time, right?
Absolutely. Like, one of the best things I did for myself and my business was actually having a 1 day a week, what happens to be a Saturday, where I digitally and people unplug, and I just read a book, or I sleep in, or I find cleaning and dishes cathartic. So that's what I do. And it just recharges my little battery. Yeah.
There it is. It's about your battery. And then shyness is different than introversion. And shyness is something that can definitely be overcome. Maybe you didn't have a good social role model in your life to help you learn some social skills to build your confidence. And extrovert, introvert, ambivert, which I am. I'm half introvert, half extrovert. I love this. Afterwards, I'm going to take a nap. I do my naps. That's my survival tip. But those are all things that can be overcome. People that say, I absolutely cannot socialize, I just don't do this. Well, I don't do push-ups very well. And so, if I want to get better at that, I'm going to have to start doing more push-ups. It's practice and exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's just you're building a different muscle.
Absolutely.
So something that I'm curious for our audience is, because I want to dive into the benefits of having a good conversation in your personal life, but something I think that I see my clients, business owners struggle with is how do you create those meaningful relationships with your employees, with your team, without crossing the line, or getting too familiar with them, and having a dynamic shift where you're no longer the boss and you're the friend, and then it just creates some weirdness down the line.
Yeah, that's so tricky. I think that's so tricky at work anyway, even with your colleagues. I think a huge thing that has to be considered is obviously respect. What is appropriate in your private life? What should remain private, and what belongs in the office? And I think there's a really fine line there, and it's hard to define sometimes. I think we're in a new era where we're all trying to be more authentic. We're trying to be a little more vulnerable, trying to be more human. And I think that's great. But I also think there are times when people are totally unloading information about their personal lives that is not appropriate for that audience. And it may be cathartic for you to unload in the break room or whatever about some horrible thing that happened to you. But is that really the right place? The time and place, is that productive? How is that going to help? the relationship, the setting. So that's tricky. But, I remember having years ago, my last real job, I remember having a boss. She was a woman. She was our friend. Like, we did some things together socially. But I think she always commanded the respect as the boss. And she did it by showing us that she cared about us and wanted the best for us, much like, say, an older sister would, or, I wouldn't like say mom, because she wasn't, she was kind of maternal, but she was protective of us, but she also corrected us when we went into territory that really wasn't appropriate. She gently mentored us in that area. And I think every different company culture, organizational culture, has to find and define and communicate those lines on what's expected. What are things that we are going to do here at the office for the betterment of the business? And then what are things that need to be left at home?
Yeah. I love that.
If you're making anybody uncomfortable in any way, and sometimes people need to speak up and say, you know what, that's kind of uncomfortable to listen to that. I don't really feel like today is the day to be talking about that, or this isn't the place.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of ways that I kind of navigate this tricky situation is, one, asking the question, are you looking for like a solution? Or are you just looking for like to vent, or, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to support? Kind of feeling out what they actually need in the moment.
Right.
Because I think that's important to your point from a few minutes ago. Like, what is the intention of this conversation? What
is the intention? Why are you asking me? Like, if someone asks you a question and you're not comfortable with it, there are many ways to respond. One of them is, why do you want to know? Or how is that pertinent to our work life here? How is this pertinent to the meeting that we're in? If you can explain to me why you need to know this, I might consider sharing more. But if you're just digging for dirt, or if you're just snoopy, which there's a difference between being curious. Curious is a great trait in conversation. It's really awesome. It's that being interested. Being snoopy is when you're crossing the line into information that's none of your business. Money, the intimate details of your love life, the problems that your kids are having at school. I have one of my friends that I mentioned in my book. Her name's Karen Snyder, and she's a speaker and trains all kinds of executives and professionals. And she says when she has a problem, like a big problem that's just going to weigh on her and impact her performance, she chooses very carefully 3 people who she will talk to about it. And it may just be, look, I just need you to know this is happening. I don't need you to do anything about it. I just need you to know I'm a little distracted right now. And I'm just telling you, and I'm telling 2 other people. Or she may say, I'm telling you because maybe you can give me some advice on how to deal with this. So I thought that was brilliant. It was a way to just keep the brush fire under control, so that it doesn't impact the productivity of the office, but yet allowed her to have like a little a pressure valve where she has somebody she can confide in, because that apparently is an issue now too, where people don't feel they have anybody to talk to. There's some startling statistics about that, and people are really disconnected from each other. In their personal lives, and that's why a lot of times they bring their personal stuff into the office, is because they don't have anywhere else to talk about it, which is part of the issue that I'm trying to address. Is we all need connection. We need that connection.
Yeah, we do. And I think we were starved for it for a few long years, and then
absolutely
this digital age is definitely creating that disconnection chasm. And something that I try to ground myself in and share with my clients is, there's this power of presence. Like, you can have a really great conversation in 5 minutes by being very present versus trying to like check your phone or like not be fully present. And so a question that I recommend asking is, do you have time to talk about this right now? Because I think with the digital age, because everything is so highly accessible and instant gratification, a lot of times we go into a conversation thinking the person has the time or the space or is in the right mindset to have that conversation, and they're actually not.
Right. And we want, we've gotten into this world where we want what we want right now. We
Mm-hmm.
instant, like you said, instant gratification. I need to talk about this right now, when maybe it could be, can we talk about this like at the end of the day, when I can stay here a little longer and spend some time with you? I have a friend who's a consultant here in Austin, and she literally shifted the culture of a small company that was having horrible turnover, and just the culture was just, things were not working out really well. And one of the things she noticed in just spending some time at the office and observing was that the person who was the boss was in their office on their computer all day long. And when someone entered the office, they weren't even acknowledged. The person never looked up from their computer. And so what she said is, if someone enters your office, everything starts at the top. So we're going to work on you first. When someone enters your office, announced or unannounced, you stop typing, you look up from your device, and we can all use this advice. Looking up from our devices is going to probably be, the biggest thing, the revolutionary thing we can do for our social relationships. But anyway, she said, you're going to look up and you're going to greet the person. You're going to invite them to sit down. And you're going to ask them what's on your mind, and you're going to give them your full attention. And if it's going to be something that is going to require a longer conversation, then that needs to be established. Like, okay, I can see that this is an issue. We need to probably spend 30 minutes working on this. And why don't we do that at 2:00 this afternoon when, I'm back from lunch? But the simple acknowledgement, eye contact, a greeting, calling them by name, literally that shifted the entire culture of that organization. Everybody started treating each other with a little more respect, because the boss was treating everybody else, the employees, with respect. So whatever we want from other people, I suggest that we start giving it in abundance and see if that starts to shift things.
What a great story and a great reminder. You get what you give.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's shift a little bit, because I know we've talked about, what a good conversation is, which is determinant on the situation. But let's talk about the juiciest part of this, which is how having good conversations create power and benefits in both our personal life and our professional life.
It's just this was one of the most interesting parts of my research in this book. I knew from years ago that anything great that's ever happened in my life came as the result of a conversation and a connection, almost always, unless I read about something in a book that changed my life. And that to me is another form of conversation. But when we connect with other people, a lot of things happen. Even if you're the kind of person that goes to the grocery store and the dry cleaner and the coffee shop, and you're greeting the clerk, you're greeting the person that takes your dry cleaning, you're greeting the barista that's making your coffee, and you say, hello, good morning, Bob. How's your day going? How's things what's happening? If you just spend 2 seconds acknowledging people and having a little banter, that literally changes your body chemistry. It allows this hormone called oxytocin, it's our tend and befriend hormone, to start going through our bodies. And the thing about oxytocin is it doesn't last very long in our system, whereas cortisol, which is our fight or flight hormone, that lasts way longer. And so our bodies are literally soaked in cortisol most days. So having that little burst of oxytocin, even from just a short friendly conversation with the bus driver, or your neighbor, you're out bringing your trash can out to the curb, and your neighbor is too. If you wave at them and have just a few moments with them, that is going to not only improve your day, it's probably going to have a ripple effect and improve your neighbor's day and his wife's day and their kids' day. It is a positive momentum builder. So it's literally brain chemistry. So there's also a huge study that's been done at Harvard. It's called in fact, I have the clipping right here. It was in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago. It's the Harvard Happiness Study. I want to get this right. Harvard study of adult development has found that personal connections are the most important factor in long-term health and happiness. That's health and happiness. And they've been studying people for 85 years. So they have people who they followed through their whole lives. And certainly the happiness piece, the life satisfaction piece is great, but also you have a better chance of avoiding diseases like diabetes. You have a better chance of surviving diseases that could be terminal. And you have a much better chance of living a long, happy, vibrant life if you're out and about connecting with people, making new friends, not just the same old friends that you've always talked to, but it literally improves your happiness and health. It is one of the number one skills that is valued in the workplace. For example, if you are someone who is skilled at talking with your work colleagues and clients about topics beyond work, beyond the business aspect, if you can small talk about, a golf game, or how about that movie last night? Hey, are you following The Crown, or are you reading this book, or whatever? If you can talk about a number of different things, even at work, you are considered a more valuable employee. And obviously in the networking world, you're a business owner. When people like you, when they can talk easily with you, they are more likely to trust you and do business with you. So that's, we do business with people we know, like, and trust. That, yes, that is absolute truth. We're more creative. We're more innovative. We absorb better ideas. We get out of our own heads and we start to expand our world of possibilities with solving business problems. We build our communities that way. Our families are stronger. It just kills me when I'm out and about and, like, we're out at a restaurant and I see an entire family sitting at a table together having a meal and they're all on their phones. It's just heartbreaking.
It's
to
the
me.
worst.
It's heartbreaking. There's so many benefits. And yet we have all these obstacles, like our technology, our laptops, our smartphones. We have mental chatter in our heads. We're pretty convinced that we're not good at this, that no one's going to like us, that we shouldn't talk to strangers. They're dangerous. I don't know. How is the dry cleaning lady dangerous? She's not dangerous. She's bored. She wants to have a conversation. I was showing my son's wedding pictures to Gloria at the dry cleaners earlier this week because we have that kind of relationship, and it's wonderful. I could go on and on about that, but honestly, if you want to be successful at work, if you want to be successful with relationships, with friendships, and if you want to be healthy and happy and live a long life, start being more social. Get off your phone, pull yourself away from Netflix, start talking to people.
This just warms my heart. And, I agree completely. And in fact, two of my favorite people that I see almost every day are my UPS guy and my mail guy. Because we just chat about all the things. But how many people talk to their mail guy or their UPS guy?
I know. Well, and I can definitely sympathize for introverts where it's like, this sounds exhausting. This is just too much work, and I don't know. And I get that. I have that side of me too, where there are days I am totally peopled out. But honestly, if you pay attention to what's going on, and if you start to practice, again, it's like the push-ups. If you start to practice, start coming up with some questions or comments that allow people to jump in and join you in a conversation. If you really admit it, you might admit that you're feeling a little better. Like after you've talked to the UPS guy and just waved at him and you've been acknowledged as a human being, doesn't that feel good?
Totally.
I think it feels great.
It's great. Sometimes he'll see me walking because I'm one of those weird people that walks places instead of drives.
Yep.
And he'll like honk at me and wave. And it's so nice.
I talk to the garbage guys, the recycling guys. I talk to everybody. Thank God during the pandemic, if I hadn't gone out every morning for a walk, and granted we were keeping our social distance and all of that, but just waving across the street at a neighbor and just saying, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? It just made it a little more survivable from a social standpoint, like I'm not disconnected. And I've also found, like I was in the locker room at the gym yesterday, and just as I was leaving, a woman was walking into the locker room completely, just walked right past me. No oh, hello, good morning, or excuse me, or there was no acknowledgement whatsoever. And I'm really starting, first of all, I really noticed that because this is my job
Yeah.
to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
But you get this feeling of being disrespected, you're not acknowledged. And people talk about, diversity, equity and inclusion, and let's not have microaggressions and all that, and that's really important work. But I think if we all go back to the very basic of acknowledging people in our presence, saying hello, making eye contact, smiling, making other humans feel like other humans, and that they're important, they're just as important, them walking through the world is as important as us walking through the world. I think that could be a really beautiful start to changing the way things are in the world right now.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the positive benefits. I want to ask you because it seems like even though there's so many positive benefits, and we know that people struggle with this. So what is stopping us, and what are some concrete solutions or ways that we can take away from this episode and implement to help us start building that muscle so we can have those more rewarding connections and conversations?
Well, there's a number of things. For example, if you're going to invite somebody to coffee or to happy hour or to lunch, make it in a setting where you can actually have a conversation. I mean, so many places are noisy. They have bad acoustics. There's loud music playing. The coffee grinder is going every 30 seconds. Setting and situation really matter. So think about that. I think it's easy. We do things that make it so hard on ourselves. Like there's one thing I can't stand is being at a party where the music is so loud that we have to scream at each other. I mean, for one thing, I have to protect my voice. And secondly, because I use it for a living, but secondly, there we go. I don't want to be screaming. I don't want it to be that is draining. That's just physically draining to have to do that. There are all kinds of ways that we can move past, like I said, some of the dialogue that goes on in our heads of, no one's going to want to talk to me. And here's a big one that I learned. It's called assuming positive rapport. Let's say you're going into a networking mix and mingle event, and there might be some of your coworkers there or people some of your clients, some of your vendors, but there are also going to be a lot of people you don't know. And so chances are going to be talking to someone you've never talked to before. And if you can get into this mindset of assuming positive rapport, and I'll explain what that is in a second, the conversation is going to go a lot better. And here's what assuming rapport means. Assume people are going to like you. They're going to like you. How often do you walk up to someone and start talking and go, geez, I hate this person? Never, hardly ever. And, unless they're just being a total jerk. Most of the time, we all want the opportunity to get to know somebody, and we all are interesting, and we all have stories to tell and ideas to share. And if we can stop this overly I'm trying to think of the word, being just nervous and anxious and, they're not going to like me. If we can drop that and get that vibe out of the way, I think our conversations are going to go so much better. There's a lot of ways to get past the obstacles. Get out of the house let's say you work at home. I work at home. I have to make appointments to get out of the house. Like I go to the gym really regularly. I see a lot of people there that I know. Some of them are my friends. I make appointments to go to networking meetings. I make appointments to go speak. Obviously, I book coffee with friends I haven't seen. And now that the pandemic is over, we're all having these amazing reunions, which is, I think, awesome. Yeah.
So, I know we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but I want to make sure I give you time to talk about your books. So you've got 2 books that I'm going to link in the show notes. The newest book, More Than Just Talk, The Essential Guide to Anyone Who Wants to Enjoy Better Conversations. And then your oldie but goodie, The Intentional Networker. So just give me a little synopsis of how your newest book came to be. I know you alluded to it when we started, but why this book? What's it about? And what can someone expect to walk away with from reading?
Well, I'm super proud of it because I've been working on it for so stinking long. I mean, I really put a lot into it.
Congratulations.
I really, I figured I don't know if I'll have it in me to do another book after this. So I'm going to, just give it everything I've got. The new book is essentially, I think, the prequel to The Intentional Networker. And my peer review team, I had like 15 people from all over the country in very different industries, different personality types, read the book and say, wow, the networking book was fantastic for sure. But this book is more universal, more ages, more personalities, more, I mean, you can use it in your personal life too. And even in your life with your partner, your best friend, whoever. The book, here's what the book promises. I have an entire section on really getting into the deep data of why we need to bother with this, why we have to get out of our little worlds, our little holes, our little cubby, little comfy area with the blankie and anything we can stream that we want to, and we can, watch cute kitten videos for as long as we want to. We need to get out of that because that's considered the new smoking, being isolated. And here's a really interesting, did you know that Austin is considered one of the top 20 loneliest cities in the country?
Really?
Yes. It's because people are living alone, people are eating alone, people are isolating themselves. It's
wow.
Which I never would have gotten because I feel like this is I've lived here 40 some years and it's a fun town. A lot of opportunities to get out and about. Anyway, where am I going with all this? Let's see what my book promises. It promises to really tell you why you need to do this. It promises to give you some examples of why you're probably not enjoying the conversations you want to be having. And a lot of them are easy fixes. Once you know that they exist, your life is changed. We have an entire section where you get to define what does good conversation look and sound and feel like for you? What are you wanting? And then we go into the part about how are you going to get that? And we build a conversation toolkit for you with some traits, some practices, some easy tips, some overall strategies that you can start using, some self-awareness exercises, some reflection. And then we continue on into traits that make you more likable. And some people will say, oh, well, likable? I don't, do I really want to be likable? Who doesn't? I mean,
yeah, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? I mean, when people like you, they will do almost anything for you. And I am blessed beyond measurement with people who have been stepping up to do things for me my entire life because I actually work at being likable and fun to be around. I like to think
you are very fun and likable. Yes.
Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
It promises, there's an entire section on listening, which something like 95% of the time, we're not listening. We're not listening deeply. We're not really hearing. And there are reasons why. One is talking is expressive. It feels good. We're unloading what's on our mind. Whereas listening is we're taking things in. We already have a packed brain full of thoughts. And not only do we have our packed brain full of thoughts and we're taking things in, but now we're having a response to what is being said. So it's just, if our heads could blow up like a balloon, listening makes it blow up a lot faster. So it's harder, which means we have to practice at that. But most of us, even if you think you're a great listener, chances are you're not. And this is really painful. The smarter and more successful you are, the worse you likely are as a listener. So the entire section on, how we're going to grapple with that. One more thing I need to mention about listening and being heard, like it feels really bad. I mean, if you've never been listened to, or if you started talking and the person interrupted or brought the conversation back to them, that feels really bad. The long list of bad feelings that generates is not good. But on the other hand, if someone takes the time to listen to you, like for example, you've been listening to me this whole time, Lauren, and the listeners out there. My brain, the section of my brain that lights up when I eat things like cheesecake or a really nice glass of red wine or a nice cheesy pizza, a steak, whatever I find delicious, that part of my brain, that pleasure center, is lighting up. I mean, it's literally delicious. And I find then you are literally delicious. So it goes back to that being the most I'm not going to lick you or anything.
No HR. Don't tell HR.
Shh, don't tell anybody. But I mean, when we do become the most charming person in the room, because that feeling of being heard is just so rare and so rich and delicious and juicy and wonderful. Yeah, it's powerful.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that and bringing it back to something we all love, which is food.
Food. And then here's my favorite section in my book. It's what to do about drainers and downers. Because I think a lot of people don't start the conversation, especially busy, ambitious people. We're not going to start a conversation that is going to be hard to finish and walk away from, or it's going to drain us in some way. It's going to be depressing. It's going to get political. It's going to get offensive. How do we deal with that? And this section, one of my dearest friends from back home was a pastor. We grew up together, having a great time, having our feral childhood together. And she and her husband were both pastors of a church for like 30 years. And she emailed me the other day and said, Patti, I just read your drainers and downers section, and I wish I'd had this information when we were pastors at our church. So, hey, that's an endorsement from her.
I love this. I love this. It sounds like it's not just a book of theory and stories, but it's actually giving you like concrete, tangible takeaways and maybe even like workbook styles.
Yes.
Which sounds
it's
really
it's
impactful.
A thick book. I'm warning you, it's a thick book. It's not a dense book, and it's part of the reason it's thick. I included all my resources. That's in little fine micro print in the back, but I did a lot of reading and research, and I read a lot of books, and I talked to a lot of people and experts, and listened to blogs and TED Talks and all that. And I think this is a book that you can read front to back if you want to. What somebody called it a masterclass on socialization. It's like, wow, that's awesome.
That's an endorsement.
Yeah, that's an endorsement. Or you can dive to the section that most appeals to you, which for a lot of people, it's the drainers and downers. Let's start there. That's the most painful area of our lives. You can also find out if you're a drainer and a downer. I mean, it's some of us, it's so easy to slip into self-awareness. You can pop it open wherever you want to. I mean, we tried to make it fun. My editor and I, she's a really good friend, Susan Pretty. We had such a good time working together, and we tried to keep it light. We tried to keep it, there's some spots that still make me laugh, and I've read them, 100 times. Not to say that I'm all that hilarious, but, when I turn a page and read this line, it's just the timing of it is perfect. So we tried to make it enjoyable.
Great. That's what you want in a book. Yeah. You want it to be enjoyable, goes quickly, but it also is really valuable.
Short chapters too. Sections with short chapters.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. All right. Wow. Do you guys see why Patti is the expert on this topic and why I had her on the show? So much I could talk about with you on this subject. I feel like we could really jam on this for hours, but I do want to start wrapping us up. And I know we've covered a lot. So tell me though, are there any last nuggets or tips or a few things somebody can do today or pieces of advice that you want to share with our listeners that we didn't cover that you're just like, if I don't say this, I'm going to not sleep well tonight?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I think the magic in a conversation comes from the questions. And here's the thing. If people go to my website, intentionalnetworker.com or Patti with an I, PattiDeNucci.com, and they go to the free resources, I have this is going to sound boring, but I swear it's not. It's the appendix out of my book. And the appendix is a list of conversation starting questions by setting in situation, by category. Like this is something at a professional, you're at a wedding, you're at a, neighborhood gathering, you're at the gym, you're out on a walk with your dog. Here's some sample questions. And by all means, I could have made that section like 200 pages long because the possibilities with questions, when you start collecting questions and paying attention to questions that made for a good conversation, keep those in your back pocket when you're going somewhere where you're not going to know anybody, or where you think you're going to be with somebody that you have nothing in common with. Ask them about their favorite teacher from high school. Ask them how they ended up being a podiatrist. How did that happen? What was the influence there? Once you get good questions in your back pocket, your conversations will change, and they'll leave that repetitive, boring, mind-numbing small talk rut, which, it's okay to be there for a few minutes, but, let's not talk about nothing for an hour. That's not helpful to anybody. So questions. two words that are similar to a question and they make for a good follow-up is tell me more, tell me more about your career, your business, tell me about where you grew up, tell me about your family. Did anybody or any of your family immigrants, they, come on, how many generations back does it go? I mean, whatever you're interested, tell me are two magic words. Again, it's being interested in other people and caring about them. So that's one. And then when it comes to listening, here's some quick ones. 60-40. When you're in a conversation one-on-one with someone, you listen 60% of the time. You talk 40% of the time. You err on the side of listening more. The second one would be, if you're going to talk for 40 seconds, which, how long is 40 seconds? Well, you could practice how long 40 seconds is. You talk for 40 seconds and then stop, take a breath, let the other person talk. Another one would be the acronym WAIT, WAIT. Why am I talking?
Oh, yes.
I mean, any of us who are really chatty or have been around people that just can't stop talking, you just want to almost scream to the person, why are you talking right now? Why are you talking? But let's reflect that back onto ourselves. That's the part we can control. So, I mean, there's some easy tips there. Assume positive rapport. Relax. People are going to like you. They're so worried about people liking them that they're going to like you. They're more worried about themselves than you.
Totally. I mean, that's basically one of the 4 agreements, right?
Yeah.
Don't take anything. Don't take any. Yep.
Don't take anything personally. Assume people are doing the best they can. I forget what the other 2 are.
Yeah.
Be impeccable with your word. And oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember all these.
Yeah. And always do your best. And I love the
always
why are you talking? That's
why
something that was grounded in me about like what is the purpose of this conversation? Like, what is the intent of this conversation? And really figuring out like what you need from it, which is where, we started this whole conversation.
Right.
So I love those nuggets. Those were great. Last question before we wrap up that I'm asking all my guests. What is a book that you think every entrepreneur or business owner should read and why? And no, you can't pick your book because we already talked about
Of course, that would be tacky to do that. Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I tend to run my business from a really optimistic, I know they say hope is not a strategy, but I think optimism is a strategy. I think, enjoying your work is a strategy. One of my favorite books of all time is The Art of Possibility by Rosamund Stone Zander and Ben Zander.
Okay.
And I think Ben Zander was the conductor of the one of the orchestras, I think in Boston University. I don't know. He taught at the universities up there, and his wife, who's a co-author, is a psychotherapist. So, and he's just this person that's so filled to his very molecules with possibilities of what's possible. Where could we go with this? How could we think more positively? How could we think bigger? How could we think more creatively? And the way he writes about how he taught his students and how he got them to get over this perfection thing that a lot of parents and teachers pound into us. And instead, he said to all his students, I've given you an A and you're the number one person you're the number one student in the class. And I will tell your parents this. I will lie through my teeth, but I will tell them this. So just relax about that. But now you're going to write yourself a letter on what are you going to do to deserve an A in my class? What do you want to do? What are you going to try? How are you going to expand the bounds of your current abilities? And I just think that's beautiful. And the metaphor that we can use in our businesses is where can we go beyond? And I think that helped me do this book. Like, I am so proud of this book and how it turned out. It exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
And that sounds very egotistical, but really I had a great team and they helped me. Like, Patti, we want this to be the dream book. We want this to be the book that you envision it to be. And they helped me. But I don't think I could have done it without reading that book a few years ago.
Oh, that's great. I've actually never heard of this book. So say the title one more time for our listeners.
The Art of Possibility. And the copy that I have is got a yellow cover.
Okay.
You can get it on Amazon. The Art of Possibility. Yeah.
So great. Okay. So beside going to theintentionalnetworker.com, which we will link in the show notes as well as the book. How else would you like people to connect with you? And follow up?
I'm on LinkedIn, and I will connect with you if you send me a message and tell me why you want to be connected to me. And it better not be to sell me something. That, again, on this conversing and connecting thing, yes, it's related to sales, but it's not sales. It's building a relationship. It's building. I have a lot of people who are in my network that I have never done business with, but if I like them and I understand what they do, I might refer them to somebody. So let's just get that into the conversation too. Is conversing and connecting is not selling, really. LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. I reserve that mostly for my friends. I'm on Twitter reluctantly, but go to my website, sign up. Do the little subscription pop-up thing. You will get a choice of like 4 or 5 really great freebies, including free chapters out of my books, that appendix I was talking about, some networking tips, and I think there's an intention setting worksheet that's in there too. And we'll keep adding more. But then you're on my list where you'll start getting my blogs, which I promise will have more useful information. And it's a way for us to stay in touch.
Yeah, they're great. They've got great tips. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been such a pleasure. And
all mine. All my pleasure.
I know that this is going to be very valuable for anyone who is struggling to make more rewarding conversations and connections, or who is trying to dip their toe in. So thank you.
Well, thank you for listening, Lauren, because I surely did more of the talking than you did. But this is kind of an extra, different kind of a case. And, thanks to everybody who listened, because, your time is valuable and you could have been off doing something else. So thank you for taking the time.
Of course. All right. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening in. If anything we shared sparked something in you, we'd love for you to share this episode with your friends. Also, I'd love to hear from you, so let's connect. Tag or DM me on Instagram at It's Lauren Goldstein, or LinkedIn, or wherever you hang out on the interwebs. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you're the first to get notified when our next episode is live and ready for your ears. Thanks again for listening. Until next time. Thank you for listening to the Biz Doctor podcast. Now, I like to say that friends don't let friends WebMD your business. So if you're wondering what your next steps could be, here are some options for you. No matter what, head to the show notes or to my website, goldenkeypartnership.com, for some impactful resources to support you getting out from under your business. That's also where you'll find the links to learn more about our services and how we support business owners, just like you, who are ready to make the successful jump from business operator in the trenches to visionary business owner with more freedom and flexibility. All of that info is on our website, so pop on over to learn more or get in touch. goldenkeypartnership.com. Finally, if you love the Biz Doctor podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would share it with your friends and network and give us a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to your podcast.
This is Story Studio Network.